What's up, losers? Today I'm back with another r/fatlogic adventure. Checking out a couple of wacky fat acceptance posts. Sharing my thoughts and observations about them. And having a few laughs at their expense. This is episode 157 in the fatlogic series. And I'm excited to jump head first into some fresh posts. So without further dilly-dallying, let's get into it.
How to look skinny and photogenic in photos.
This may seem extreme, but I believe people who say things like this should die. Hashtag the fact that I had to see this sheet in my notifs. Rancid. Hashtag let's see how photogenic your body looks when I'm throwing it in a shallow grave.
Well, they've got one thing right. That sure does sound extreme. Like, really extreme, almost alarmingly so, wishing death upon people, and threatening to put them in shallow graves, simply for giving advice on how to look skinny and photogenic, is genuinely unhinged behavior, and I'm honestly flabbergasted that someone would post something like this, without realizing how terrible it makes them look. People will have varying opinions on whether looking skinny is a good ideal to strive towards. And that's fine. On the one hand, I can see why lots of people are uncomfortable with messaging that prioritizes skinniness rather than health and well-being, especially considering the prevalence of eating disorders in the modeling and entertainment industries. But equally, one might argue that it is up to individuals if they want to look skinny. And that skinniness can serve as an aspirational standard for overweight people to strive towards. That might really help in some cases. I'm not going to come down fully on either side of this debate, because I see some merit each way. But I want to suggest that wherever one personally stands on the matter, this kind of violent response is utterly uncalled for. And it isn't going to achieve anything other than making fat activists look even more bitter and nutty than they already did. So here's a tip, for any lost fat activist who might somehow stumble across this video. If you want to persuade people to come around to your way of seeing things, threatening to kill them probably isn't the way to go. Why not try, I don't know, having a conversation, raising your concerns in a calm and reasonable manner, seeing what other people have to say. Who knows, maybe you could both learn something from the whole process. Wouldn't that be swell? Or you could always just mind your own business, I guess. There's that option. Not a bad option either. But it's really up to you. Just cool it on the shallow grave. Talk okay. Fantastic.
Today, at 5 feet tall and 165 pounds, I'm classified as obese by the body mass index, a mathematical value based on weight and height. Despite this, I have to acknowledge my thin privilege. What is thin privilege? A privilege is a right or advantage held by a specific person or group. Examples in today's society include being white or male or straight, or thin. The advantages of thin privilege, such as easily finding your size at trendy clothing stores, not being judged by what you eat, or finding a seat that comfortably supports you, are in contrast to the experience of people in larger bodies. Studies have shown that those considered obese are bullied, discriminated against in the job market, and receive lower quality medical care, states an April 2021 Good Housekeeping article, published as part of its anti-diet special report. If you are perceived to be of normal weight or below, as determined by relatively arbitrary BMI cutoffs, there are certain harms in society that you don't have to endure just because of your body size. While medically I am defined as obese, I don't face many of the challenges that fat people regularly experience. I can go to the mall and expect to find cute clothes that comfortably fit. I don't have to Google a restaurant to see if it has seating that will accommodate my body. I don't have to purchase 2 plane tickets when my body cannot conform to the space the airline has provided. I have thin privilege because of these things that I don't experience.
Haha, wow. This is just embarrassing. People are really out here trying to wriggle out of their obesity by pointing to people who are even more obese than they are, saying how much harder things are for them, and claiming that they have thin privilege. By comparison, unbelievable. I get the feeling that these people think that they're really slick, using the whole fat allyship ruse to distance themselves from their obvious fatness. But all I can say is, we're onto you. You're not fooling anyone, haha. Aside from that though, my main observations about this post are 1. It's super funny to me how this poster raises thin privilege as some super serious issue that horribly affects fat people. Then their first example is easily finding your size at trendy clothing stores. Like, call me privileged if you want, but I really don't think that the comparative difficulty or ease of finding trendy clothes is much of a dividing line between society's haves and have-nots. And the fact that this is the first thing these fat activists and fat allies think of when they call out the injustice of thin privilege doesn't exactly convince me that the issue is as urgent or dramatic as they're making it out to be. 2. It makes no sense how the post says that, quote, relatively arbitrary BMI cutoffs and the public perceptions around them determine whether someone receives thin privilege or not, then goes on to describe how they, despite having an obese BMI, also benefit from thin privilege in relation to things like clothes and seating. Like, if you're not having these problems, then it's not BMI cutoffs that are allocating or withholding thin privilege. And if the problems are stuff like finding a seat big enough to accommodate you, it's not about perceptions of a healthy body weight either. It is, very simply, that some people are fricking huge, and that causes an issue when they need to fit into things. Bringing up BMI and how apparently arbitrary it is doesn't tell us anything useful in this case. It's just a cheap distraction, and that couldn't be more obvious. And 3, I'm more than a little dubious about the anti-diet special report, published by Good Housekeeping, as a source, but even if I grant the claims around bullying and discrimination in the job market, I don't think centering the conversation around so-called thin privilege is a wise course of action. People who treated fat people cruelly or unfairly should be held to account for their behavior. Without a doubt, but even if we were somehow to sort all of that out and prevent people from being assholes, nearly all of the most severe difficulties of obesity will still remain: health issues, mobility issues, dependence on other people for basic daily functions, etc. So implying that what fat people need is simply for societal privilege to be redistributed more generously towards them obscures the more important underlying problem. At a certain point, the harsh reality is going to come crashing down, one way or another, so why not put our best foot forward and deal with it proactively, rather than constantly seeking out other things to fret over or get angry about? Just a thought.
Look at this racist, classist, inaccurate poster I found in West Philly.
Today's after-school snack could be tomorrow's diabetes. Sugary snacks can lead to obesity, which can cause diabetes and its serious complications.
The poster reads, today's after-school snack could be tomorrow's diabetes. Sugar does not cause diabetes. Sugar does not cause fatness. Both fatness and diabetes exist in the world, regardless of what snacks you eat as a child. Giving this message to parents and kids only leads to restriction, shame, disordered eating, eating disorders, and self-blame. It is extremely problematic that this message exists in West Philly, which has a high population of lower-income Black residents. I bet we wouldn't find this same poster in a wealthier, whiter neighborhood. Philadelphia has some of the highest rates of food insecurity. Why are we so concerned with what these children are eating? Diet culture is not just some annoying, nagging force that exists in our world. It is violent, it is oppressive, it is racist. If we want to do something about disease prevention, the last thing on our minds should be what individuals are eating.
God, what a brain-dead take. I mean seriously. Here you have a community that, by the Post's own admission, is subject to significant socio-economic disadvantage, one consequence of which is that it has an alarming obesity rate. And when a real effort is made to help the underprivileged children in the community, by providing people with information about the importance of a healthy diet, this poster is just like, "Nah, it's cool. We'll just let the kids get diabetes." Actually doing anything to help them would be racist. Unbelievable. Man, the idiocy is on another level. Am I saying that this poster, by itself, is enough to address unequal health outcomes? Absolutely not. Do we still need to ameliorate food insecurity? Of course. But none of that is an argument against having the poster. It's just an acknowledgement of its limitations, and of the existence of other related social ills that equally demand public action. Raising awareness around healthy diet practices, especially pertaining to children, remains a high priority, and I find the suggestion that we should stop trying to get kids to eat healthy and normalize feeding them endless junk food totally abhorrent. Kids deserve a fair chance in life. Full stop. So get your clownish fat politics out of their way, and give them some proper food. I'm begging you. Oh, and as a final note, I take issue with the point this post tries to make, about how this poster would be less likely to appear in a wealthy white neighborhood. Like, yeah, it probably would be less likely to appear in such a neighborhood, because wealthy white neighborhoods tend to have lower obesity rates. They are not as affected by childhood obesity, and they do not have the same need for money to be spent on remedying it. It's not racist for messaging like this to be focused towards people who actually stand to benefit from it. In fact, given that the point is likely, at least in part, to lessen racial and class disparities that disadvantage poor and black children, it's pretty much the opposite of racist. I'd even say it's progressive. But what would I know? Right. Size. Moving on.
No litter. My friend is so skinny she is underweight. And she's still saying she needs to lose weight. What on earth does she think of me then? And I know why she says it. So I'm not blaming her or anything. But it still hurts. For both me and her.
Ha ha ha, oh man. This one is too perfect. It just captures the whole fat activist mentality so damn concisely, that I'm almost inclined to stand up and applaud. No matter what the situation, no matter what someone else is going through, no matter what the reasons might be, for people acting the way they do, everything always circles back to, but what about me? I don't even know what to add really. The post speaks for itself. I'm not going to tell people that they can't ever feel insecure or whatever, because obviously that's unrealistic, but the way this poster just so clearly doesn't care about her friend, other than as a point of comparison for herself, makes me sad. Like, surely there's more to life than obsessing over yourself 24/7, and turning friendships that should be mutually supportive into pointless exercises in vanity. Right. Size. Maybe I'm just kidding myself. Oh well, onto the last post.
I don't want to hear a thing about ethical fashion. Until fat folks, all fat folks, can reliably get a reasonable range of basic clothing needs at achievable prices, filled in the first place.
There's this idea that if you dress your opinions in the language of social justice and cartoons, you can somehow defend sweatshop or child labor. No one is asking you to do this. We already live in a fricked up world. Why do this?
Yeah, for real though. I get that these fat activists are obsessed with plus-size clothes and whatnot, but openly coming out against ethical fashion, on the basis that you aren't happy with the plus-size options currently available to you, seems like a giant own goal to me, both morally and optically. Like, do these fat activists really think that people who are laboring away in hellish sweatshops should just suck it up, so that they can get that sequined thong made in a quintuple XL for no extra cost. Because if that is what they believe, all I can say is, yikes, man, jumbo yikes. The thing that makes it especially galling is how fat activists never fail to present their social critiques in the most moralistic, self-righteous, holier-than-thou tone they can manage. But when the rubber meets the road, all of a sudden they're cynical pragmatists, telling us that we can't afford to pay people a fair wage, or provide decent working conditions, or save the planet, or any of that shit, until they've been given everything they want at the lowest price possible. So much for caring about the poor. And people of color, huh? I guess poor people in third world countries, who can barely put food on the table, just aren't as important as the obese McDonald's addicts of America. And the desire to be trendy makes sense. Ultimately, I'm not going to try to shut down the whole fat acceptance movement, based on their failure to properly appreciate the struggles of poor people in the third world. Because realistically, this is a societal issue, not a fat acceptance issue. And nearly all of us turn a blind eye to the suffering of those less fortunate than us when it comes to the products we buy. I am going to say, however, that this post serves as a pretty good case in point for how self-serving the fat acceptance movement generally is, despite its lofty proclamations of unity amongst marginalized groups, and of the staggering lack of self-awareness some of these fat activists have about how seriously their complaints should be taken, in comparison to other social issues. Like, these people straight up have no clue, haha. What an embarrassing post. You hate to see it. Well, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you had a good time going through these posts with me, and that my commentary provided some insight or entertainment. What do you think? Should people who want to look skinny and photogenic in photos just die? Do obese people have thin privilege? Is promoting healthy eating in low-income areas racist? Are fat people the real victims of thin people underfeeding themselves? Should ethical fashion wait in line behind fat fashion? Let me know in the comments. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, or I'll put you in a shallow grave, and no amount of thin privilege will be able to save you. Just kidding, haha. Anyway, catch you later.